The mansion was silent except for the faint ticking of the golden clock. Ethan Vance, the youngest billionaire in the city, leaned back on his velvet couch, pretending to sleep. His goal was simple: to test the loyalty of the new maid who had joined a week ago. Her name was Maid, quiet, polite, and painfully shy. She never spoke unless spoken to, never looked directly at anyone, and worked from dawn till midnight. Ethan's friends had teased him for hiring her, calling her too simple for a house like this, but something about her silence intrigued him. That evening he ordered everyone out except Maid. "Clean my study," he said lazily. "I'll be taking a nap here." As he lay still, half covered in a silk throw, his eyes barely closed, he watched through the reflection in the glass table. Maya entered softly, clutching her cleaning cloth. She moved with delicate precision, wiping each frame, dusting each shelf. Then she paused near the couch. Her gaze lingered on his face. For a moment, Ethan thought she'd noticed he was pretending. But instead, she sighed, a soft, trembling sound. And then she whispered, "You look so tired, sir. I wish you'd eat properly." Ethan froze inside. She didn't know he could hear her. Her hand moved hesitantly, not to steal, not to touch his things, but to adjust the blanket on his shoulder. And before leaving, she took out something small from her apron pocket, a photo. It was old, creased, and in that picture was a young girl standing beside Ethan's late mother. His breath caught. How did she have that photo? Maya gently smiled at the picture, whispered something he couldn't quite hear, and slipped it back into her pocket before leaving. Ethan opened his eyes, heart racing. He had tested her honesty, but now he had more questions than answers. Who exactly was this shy maid? And how did she know his mother? Ethan couldn't sleep that night. The image of that photograph burned in his mind. His late mother had passed away over 15 years ago, and he was certain no one outside the family had that photo. So how did his new maid, Maya, have it? The next morning, he watched her quietly as she arranged flowers in the dining hall. Her movements were soft, her hair tied neatly, her uniform perfectly pressed. She looked like she belonged to another time, gentle, disciplined, untouched by greed. When she noticed his presence, she froze and looked down. "Good morning, sir," she whispered. Ethan studied her face. "Where did you grow up, Maya?" She hesitated. "A small town, sir?" "Near Clifton Hills." That name made his pulse jump. His mother had run a charity home there before she died. Later, he called his secretary. "Find everything you can about a Maya Khan from Clifton Hills, age 23. Hours passed. By evening, a report arrived. Maya had lived in a small orphanage, funded years ago by Margaret Vance, Ethan's mother. She was one of the children his mother had sponsored. Ethan felt something shift inside him. Was that why she looked at his face with such care last night? Because she remembered his mother, not as a billionaire's mother, but as a woman who once gave her food, clothes, and hope? That evening, Ethan entered the study again. Maya was dusting the bookshelves. He spoke softly. "You knew my mother, didn't you?" Her hands trembled. She turned slowly. "Yes, sir, but I didn't mean to hide it. She helped me when I was a child. I owe everything to her." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. The silence between them felt heavy, not awkward, but fragile. "You could have told me," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "Some memories are too sacred to be spoken aloud." As she walked away, Ethan realized, for the first time in years, someone had spoken to him not because of his money, but because of a memory of love. And that night he didn't pretend to sleep. He stayed awake, wondering why a maid's honesty felt warmer than all the luxury surrounding him. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the glass windows of the mansion, painting golden streaks across the marble floor. Ethan stood near the grand piano, his mind far away from the company meetings and business deals. For the first time in years, he was thinking about something other than success. He was thinking about her, the shy maid who had whispered to his sleeping form, who had a photograph of his late mother, and who had spoken with a warmth no one had dared to show him in years. Maya entered quietly, holding a silver tray with his breakfast. "You didn't eat last night," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried worry. Ethan smiled faintly. "You sound like my mother used to." Maya's hands froze for a second, but she quickly looked away. "She was a kind woman, sir. I still remember her smile." As she placed the tray down, Something slipped from her wrist, a small silver locket. It hit the floor and broke open. Inside was a faded picture, a younger Ethan, maybe 10 years old, standing beside his mother. The same photo she had last night, only smaller, cut in half. Ethan picked it up slowly, stunned. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his tone sharper than he intended. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have brought it here. It's all I have from the only person who ever cared for me." Ethan softened. "My mother gave this to you?" Maya nodded. "She said one day when I grew up I should return it to her son. But when I tried, it was too late. She was gone, and I didn't know how to face you." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. He looked down at the locket, half his, half hers. It felt like fate had drawn them together through grief and time. He finally spoke, voice low but sincere. "You don't have to return it. Keep it. She wanted you to have hope, not guilt." Maya's eyes shimmered with gratitude. "Thank you, sir, but why are you being so kind to me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe because you remind me of everything I lost when I became rich?" As she left, he watched her go, realizing the mansion that once echoed with emptiness now felt strangely alive. But outside the window in the long driveway, a black car stopped. A man in a dark suit stepped out, carrying papers stamped with Ethan's company logo and a photo of Maya. And just like that, the peace of the mansion was about to shatter. The mansion's peace was interrupted by the deep growl of a black car pulling up at the gate. Ethan was in his office, reviewing documents, when his head of security knocked and entered. "Sir, there's someone here asking for Miss Maya Khan, says it's urgent." Ethan frowned. "Maya? Who is he?" The guard hesitated. "He claims to be her brother." Ethan's eyes narrowed. He had checked her background. There was no mention of any brother. "Send him in," he ordered. Moments later, a tall man with rough eyes and a worn leather jacket entered. "Maya Khan works here?" he asked bluntly. Ethan's tone was calm but cold. "Depends who's asking." The man smirked. "Name's Rizwan. I'm her brother. She doesn't talk much about me, but she should have." Ethan didn't like his arrogance. "What do you want with her?" Rizwan threw a folder onto the desk. "That girl ain't who you think she is. You rich folks like stories. Here's one. 2 years ago, she worked in Karachi as a housekeeper. The place got robbed. Jewelry worth millions vanished. She disappeared the same night." Ethan froze. "That's impossible." "Check the police file," Rizwan said with a smirk. "It's all there. Maya Khan prime suspect." Just then, the door opened. Maya stood there, her face pale. "Rizwan?" Her voice trembled. "You're not my brother." Ethan turned sharply to her. "Is this true?" "What's he talking about?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Sir, please. I didn't steal anything. I was framed. That man," she pointed at Rizwan, "he worked there too. He took everything, then blamed me." Rizwan laughed harshly. "Oh, don't start the drama again, sweetheart. You've been living a good life here. Maybe he doesn't know who you really are." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her. Her eyes, so honest, so full of fear, didn't look like those of a liar, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. "Leave," Ethan said coldly to Rizwan. "Now?" Rizwan smirked and left, whispering as he passed Maya. "He'll find out soon enough." When the door closed, silence filled the room. Maya stood there, tears streaming down her face. "Sir, I swear I didn't." Ethan raised a hand, his voice low but sharp. "Enough, I need time to think." Her lips trembled, but she nodded silently and walked out. The roads glistened under the dying rain, and every drop that hit Ethan's coat felt like punishment. He had driven all night, from station to station, asking strangers, showing her picture, the one from the mansion camera feed, but no one had seen her. At dawn, he stopped at a small roadside cafe. His driver begged him to rest, but Ethan shook his head. "I can't rest knowing she's out there alone." He sipped the bitter coffee, staring blankly at the foggy window. That's when he noticed a small notice board near the counter. "Charity drive, Margaret Vance Orphanage." His heart skipped. It was his mother's orphanage, the same place Maya had donated to. He rushed there immediately. The orphanage stood on the edge of the old district, faded walls, Broken swings, laughter echoing faintly inside. When Ethan entered, a middle-aged woman looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" He showed her the picture. "This girl, Mayakan, was she here?" The woman's eyes softened. "Yes, she came last night. Left a small envelope for the children, money and a note. She said she was going away for a while." Ethan's breath quickened. "Did she say where?" "She mentioned something about a village by the lake. Sighed, she used to go there when she was little. A place called Silver Shore." Without wasting a second, Ethan turned and ran to his car. As they drove through the countryside, his mind replayed every moment, her voice, her smile, her trembling hands holding the locket. He remembered how she looked at him not as a CEO, but as a person. Hours later, they reached Silver Shore, a quiet lakeside village, where fog rolled across the water like drifting dreams. Children played barefoot near the dock. Old women sold tea and flowers. And there, near the water, sitting on a bench with a small suitcase beside her, was Maya. Her head was bowed, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked so fragile, and yet so peaceful. Ethan walked slowly toward her. Each step felt like a confession. When she finally looked up, her eyes widened in shock. "Sir." He stopped a few feet away, his voice breaking softly. "I told you to stay, and when you left, everything felt empty again." Maya blinked back tears. "I didn't want to cause you more trouble. People like me don't belong in your world." Ethan shook his head gently. "You belong wherever honesty and kindness exist. And my world has none of that without you." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Only the lake's soft ripples filled the air. Then Ethan took something from his pocket, the broken half of the locket. He placed it in her hand. "It was never yours alone. Or mine, it's our story now." Maya's lips trembled as she looked at the locket pieces fitting together once more. Her tears fell freely, mixing with the lake's mist. And as the morning sun broke through the clouds, Ethan realized, for the first time in his life, he wasn't testing anyone. He was learning to love. The sun shimmered over the lake, turning the water golden. Ethan stood in silence, still holding the broken locket between his fingers. For the first time in years, he had nothing to offer but sincerity, no wealth, no power, no promises he couldn't keep. "Maya," he whispered, "come back with me, please." She looked away, her eyes glistening. "Back? To the mansion where people whisper behind my back? Where I'm just a maid who almost ruined your name?" Ethan took a step closer. "I don't care what they say." "But I do," she interrupted, her voice trembling but firm. "Because someday those same people will remind you who I was and who you are. And you'll hate me for making your world smaller." He shook his head. "You think I'm that weak?" "I think you're too kind," she said softly. "And kindness doesn't always survive the world you live in?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think this is pity?" Maya smiled sadly. "No, it's love. But love that grew too fast, like a flower in the wrong season." Silence lingered. The wind played with her scarf, brushing it against his hand. He wanted to hold her, but he didn't. Instead, he said quietly, "Then let me wait for the right season." Her eyes widened. For a moment, the guarded maid disappeared, and the gentle girl who once prayed beside an orphanage returned. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would a man like you wait for someone like me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because my mother always said the rarest people aren't the ones with riches, but the ones who stay kind even when the world turns cruel. And I finally found one." Tears filled her eyes. She turned away, covering her face. "Don't make this harder." "I'm not here to take you back," he said gently. "I'm here to promise you, whenever you're ready to return, not as a maid, but as yourself. I'll be waiting." Maya looked up, speechless. His eyes held no demand, no authority, only quiet truth. He handed her a small card. "This isn't an order. It's my address, in case you ever want to write. That's all." She took it slowly, her hands trembling. "Goodbye, sir," she whispered. Ethan smiled sadly. "Call me Ethan?" And then he walked away, the lake wind carrying his name softly across the water. When he reached his car, he looked back once more. Maya was still standing there, her silhouette small but radiant against the rising sun. She wasn't his maid anymore. She wasn't even his love. She was his reason to change. 3 months had passed since the morning by the lake. The mansion, once echoing with silence, now felt alive again, but in a different way. Ethan had changed. He no longer hosted grand dinners or flaunted his wealth. He spent his mornings at the orphanage his mother once ran, reading to children and repairing broken toys. His nights were quieter, filled with books his mother loved and thoughts he never had time for before. His employees noticed the difference too. He smiled more. He listened more. He cared. But even as the seasons changed, one thing stayed constant, the empty space in his heart where Maya's presence used to be. Sometimes, late at night, he would look at the broken locket on his desk. Half his, half hers, still waiting to be whole again. Then, one morning, while sorting through business letters, his butler entered. "Sir, a letter arrived for you." No return address, but it smells like jasmine. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He tore the envelope open carefully. The handwriting, delicate, familiar. "Dear Ethan, you once told me to come back when I was ready, not as a maid, but as myself. I thought about those words every day. I used to think love was about needing someone, but now I've learned love is about becoming someone worthy of the person who once saw goodness in you. I'm teaching at a small school by the lake now. The children remind me of who I used to be, scared, lost, but hopeful. I tell them stories about kindness, about a man who taught me that wealth means nothing without compassion. I don't know if I'll ever be brave enough to return to your world, but if one day you happen to walk by Silver Shore again, you'll find a small school with blue doors. There you'll always be welcome, not as a CEO, but as Ethan, Maya." Ethan closed his eyes, holding the letter close to his heart. He could almost hear her voice again, soft, steady, full of peace. He whispered, "You didn't have to become worthy, Maya. You already were." That evening he made a decision. He called his board of directors. "I'm stepping down for a while," he said. "I need time to build something real, something that gives back." And just like that, the man who once tested others to prove their worth had finally begun testing himself. Outside, rain began to fall softly, the same gentle rain that once brought them together. And somewhere, by the silver lake, a woman looked up at the same sky and smiled, because she knew, no matter how far they were, some hearts never stopped finding each other. A year had passed. The mansion had new caretakers, the office had new faces, but Ethan's heart still carried the same memory, her voice, her kindness, her letter written in jasmine scent. He had spent months traveling, funding schools, hospitals, and orphanages in his mother's name. Every time he helped someone, he felt a little closer to Maya, as if she were watching silently, smiling from a distance. But one morning, as he read through a charity report, something caught his eye. A photograph, a group of children standing in front of a small blue-doored school, and in the middle, a familiar face, Maya. She wasn't wearing her maid's uniform anymore. She was dressed simply, her hair tied back, laughter glowing in her eyes as she held the hands of children around her. It was the first time he had seen her smile, truly smile. Without another thought, Ethan packed his bag and drove back to Silver Shore. The journey felt shorter this time, maybe because his heart already knew the way. When he reached the village, the air smelled of rain and blooming lilac. He followed the sound of laughter, and there it was. A small white building with a blue door, just like her letter had said. Children were playing outside. One little girl, about 5 years old, ran up to him and tugged his coat. "Mister, are you here to see Teacher Maya?" Ethan smiled softly. "Yes, I think I am." She giggled. "She's inside." But she said no visitors during class unless they bring candy. He chuckled and pulled out a chocolate bar from his pocket. "Will this work?" The girl gasped dramatically. "You may enter." Ethan laughed. A genuine laugh, something he hadn't done in years. He stepped through the blue door, his heart thudding like it did that first night he pretended to sleep. Inside, Maya stood by a chalkboard teaching a group of children. When she saw him, the chalk slipped from her fingers. Her breath caught. "Ethan?" He nodded, smiling softly. "I told you I'd visit." The children looked between them curiously. The little girl whispered loudly, "Teacher, is he the man from your stories?" Maya blushed. "Stories, huh?" Ethan grinned. "I hope they were kind ones." The class burst into giggles. Maya quickly gathered herself. "All right, everyone, go play outside for a while." When the children left, silence filled the room. gentle, not awkward. Ethan looked around. So this is where you've been hiding your light. She smiled faintly. Not hiding, just shining quietly. He took a step closer. You kept your promise? And you? She asked. He met her gaze. I changed mine. I didn't just wait, I became someone worth waiting for. Tears shimmered in her eyes. You were always worth it. Ethan, I just had to see you like this, not as a man of wealth, but as a man of heart. At that moment, the little girl peeked through the door again. Teacher, can he stay for lunch? Maya laughed softly, wiping her tears. If he promises not to give homework. Ethan smiled. Deal. And as laughter filled the small classroom, he realized this wasn't the reunion he had imagined. It was something much purer, because in that tiny school with blue doors, he didn't just find Maya again. He found home. The sun was setting over Silver Shore, its golden light spilling across the lake like melted amber. The laughter of children drifted through the air, echoing against the calm water. She turned and waved at him with both hands. Ethan, look, teacher says I did my reading perfect. He smiled warmly. Then I suppose that means a chocolate reward, doesn't it? The girl squealed with joy, running toward him. Maya followed, smiling, her eyes soft and peaceful. When the girl ran off to play, Ethan and Maya sat together in quiet. The wind carried the scent of jasmine, just like the first night she had left him that letter. It's strange, Ethan said softly. This place feels like my mother's home, peaceful, honest. Maya nodded. Maybe because your mother's heart still lives here, through every child who learns, and every hand that gives. He looked at her thoughtfully. You know, she once told me that one day I'd meet someone who'd teach me how to see the world without walls. Maya smiled faintly. And did you? He turned to her, his voice low but steady. Yes, she's sitting right beside me. Her breath caught. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from the quiet truth of his words. She whispered, Ethan, I never wanted your world. I only wanted your kindness to survive in it. He took her hand gently, fingers trembling. Then let's build a new one where kindness isn't rare. For a long moment, they simply sat there, hands entwined, the lake shimmering before them like glass. Children's laughter echoed around. Mingling with the distant call of bells from the village temple, Maya leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. I never thought love could be this quiet, she said softly. Ethan smiled. Quiet love is the kind that lasts. Just then, the little girl returned, holding something in her hand. Teacher. Mr. Ethan, look what I found near the tree. It was the broken locket, the same one they had once shared, only now the halves were perfectly joined together, the clasp repaired with a tiny silver wire. Ethan and Maya stared at it in awe. The girl grinned. It was lying under the flowers. Maybe it wanted to come home. Maya laughed through her tears and placed it around the child's neck. Then it belongs to you now. Keep it safe, little one. The child smiled proudly and ran off again, the locket glinting in the sun, half his, half hers, now passed to a new heart. Ethan looked at Maya, his eyes full of meaning. She found what we both lost. Maya nodded gently. Because love, Ethan, never stays broken. The sky deepened into shades of orange and pink. Ethan wrapped his arms softly around her shoulders, and together they watched the sunset melt into the silver water, the same lake where they had once said goodbye. But now there were no goodbyes, only peace. And somewhere, in the golden stillness of the evening, Ethan could almost hear his mother's voice, calm, warm, and full of love. You've kept the promise, my son. You finally learned to see with your heart. As the final rays disappeared beyond the horizon, Ethan whispered, and I finally found home.